This is part 2 to chapter 5. Earlier, we had a discussion about, let's go back a second, customer value analysis and customer perceived value. Now we're going to have a discussion about customer satisfaction. And how do we build customer satisfaction that essentially will help us develop customer loyalty? So customer value is an important component of building satisfaction and developing long-term loyalty. Customer satisfaction is when a person feels pleasure that results from comparing a product or service's perceived performance to expectations they may have. Customer dissatisfaction is when the person feels disappointed when they compare the product or service's perceived performance or outcome to what they had anticipated. Importantly, firms must maintain adequate profits while they satisfy customers. And it's also important to discuss the range to which, or the varying degrees to which, customers may be satisfied. And what we see here is that you may be it may be way below their expectations, or the product or service may be way above expectations. And so there is a range to which customers may feel either very or oversatisfied, or unsatisfied or very unsatisfied. So how can we gauge customer satisfaction? We've talked about surveys already and market research. You can certainly use surveys to determine how satisfied or unsatisfied customers are with a product or service or components of that product or service. Sometimes repeat purchasing and sales data is a good indicator of customer satisfaction to some degree. And you can also find out ways that you could perhaps make customers more satisfied. Now, loyalty is the result of high customer satisfaction. Customers do have also varying degrees of loyalty to specific brands or stores or companies. And loyalty is what we call a deeply held commitment to either rebuy or repatronize some product or service in the future, despite other things or situational influences that might get in the way. You can probably think of several brands that you're fairly loyal to and that you have been for a long time. How influential are competitors' advertising and marketing efforts to get you to switch? If you're completely resistant to those efforts, then you're very brand loyal. If you've found yourself maybe taking a chance on one of those other products, your level of loyalty may be a little bit lower. You're open to change. So how do you build customer value, satisfaction, and then loyalty? We've had a lot of discussion about quality already. Quality is that totality of features and characteristics of a product or service that bear on its ability to satisfy stated or implied needs of the customer. So just to put it a little bit more simply, did the company meet or exceed customer expectations? And there's two forms of quality that tend to surface when we are trying to determine if that product or service has quality. One of them is called conformance quality, and the other is called performance quality. Conformance quality deals with, did the company deliver what they promised they would? On the other hand, performance quality is some type of feature or benefit that is above or better than a competitor, or it focuses on some type of product attribute that performs well. So in the terms of airlines, we can think of Frontier or Delta, or think of anyone you want to. A conformance quality measure would be, did you get to where you wanted to go when the airline promised you would get there? If both of these airlines have on-time arrivals as they have promised, then they're pretty much equal on a competitive scale in terms of that conformance quality. In terms of performance quality, perhaps Delta markets and advertises and promotes the fact that they have more comfortable seats with more leg rooms, some other perks that are available. You can maybe upgrade more easily, whereas Frontier doesn't have a lot of those upgrade offers. And if they're able to meet those promises, then they have performance quality. I wanted to show you something from the American Customer Satisfaction Index. Satisfaction is such an important concept that it is measured by a national company in all types of different industries. And it all falls into this American Customer Satisfaction Index. The ACSI results come out throughout the year in different industries, and they're all on a scale of 0 to 100, where 100 would be companies who have customers who are the most satisfied. So if the score is closer to 0, that implies that the customers are least or less satisfied. And this is an important measure that companies actually pay a lot of attention to. It's really important to them on a yearly basis. This data has proven to be very strongly related to other micro and macro economic performance indicators. One of the most essential ones is probably that firms with higher levels of customer satisfaction tend to be ones that have higher earnings and also stock returns relative to their competitors in their category. Stock portfolios based on companies that show strong performance on this index deliver excess returns in up markets as well as down markets. So they take this index very seriously and use it as an indicator to promote the company also with shareholders and stakeholders. So let's take a look at how the airline industry has performed. This is from 1995 all the way up to 2017. So here are some of the major airlines in the United States. So the company that has the highest American Customer Satisfaction Index, so the one that's closest to 100 at present, is JetBlue. And below that is Southwest, Alaska, American, and Delta in the 5th spot. Frontier is down here at a rating of 63. 63, and Spirit at 61. US Airways was purchased by American. Continental, I think, was purchased by United, so that's why these have dropped off. So you can see that some of these discount carriers like Frontier and Spirit and Allegiant, these are all the discount carriers, although unfortunately United is in there. They have the lowest rating for customer satisfaction. So that ought to tell you something about how people feel towards this super discounted air travel and all the unbundling and added fees and so forth. Now, I don't have all the measures that went into this survey, but this gives you an idea of how they stack up. So you can take from this that perhaps people who fly on JetBlue and Southwest may become the most loyal to these airlines. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is a concept called customer lifetime value. Now, I mentioned a couple times how much loyalty is important to companies because the longer they can keep a customer, the more revenue that can be generated from that customer over time. And in the long run, loyal customers are valuable because they tend to spend more and more and more money over a longer period of time. It's also very critical because it costs a lot more money to gain a new customer than it does to keep an old one. It's very expensive to gain a new customer in terms of advertising to them, sending direct mail pieces, getting their attention, proving the worth compared to competitors. And that stuff takes a lot of investment and resources, which really is money, time, and effort. So an important metric for any company is to know what is their typical customer lifetime, and then how do they value that customer lifetime in terms of dollars. So customer lifetime value, or CLV, is the net present value, so current, today's dollars, of the stream of future profits that are expected over the customer's lifetime of purchases. So lifetime doesn't necessarily mean until the day you die. This means retention for the firm. Customer lifetime is the average period of time that they retain the customer. An easy example to think of is the cell phone carriers. There are a couple different options. There's AT&T and Verizon and T-Mobile, and they compete very heavily with each other. So the lifetime would be how long can we keep a cell subscriber within our network without them defecting. And that's the lifetime of that customer. And they have an average of how long most customers remain with their company. So it's not about any one particular customer, but looking at the customer base as a whole. So an aggregate of everyone. And then understanding that while some customers never return, complete attrition, there is on average a typical customer lifetime, and that lifetime has an economic value. And that's what we're talking about here. What is the economic value today of the future stream of profits? So in today's dollars, if you end up staying with AT&T for 10 more years, what is that 10 more years worth of revenue worth today? And that's what we're going to take a look at. And the reason, or one of the reasons, not the only, one of the reasons this is so important is because down here, what it says, if you don't know what a customer is worth, it's impossible to know what you should spend. Okay, so there's marketing dollars to get one, and also what should you spend to keep one, and that's retention. Okay. So I want to point out this little chart, or this little graphic here, to show that typically firms will realize they have different segments of customers in terms of profitability. Okay, we know we can segment our customer base in a lot of different ways for marketing purposes, and this is one of them, understanding the value of each type of customer. And that will help you decide how much are you willing to spend and how much time and effort are you willing to put in to keeping them. So in this example here, it shows that there's about 20% of customers who are not profitable. And the company has a choice here as to what should we do with them. Should we spend money to encourage them to buy more? Or should we think about letting them go? And I know that sounds a little bit silly, but there are sometimes customers that are unprofitable and are too expensive to keep or maintain at all. The middle region here are your profitable customers, and that usually takes up the largest percentage of the customer base in terms of segmentation. Then you have over here, 20% of these are your very profitable customers. These are the people that are very loyal. They have high brand loyalty. They probably produce positive word of mouth and try to attract their friends and family to also be customers. And this also demonstrates what you may remember, the 80-20 rule, where 80% of your profits come from 20% of your customers. And that's because these are the guys that buy the most and the most frequently. So you have to decide, what is their lifetime value and what are we willing to do to make sure we never lose this core group of profitable, very profitable customers. We already talked about loyalty. So let's move on and have a further discussion about what is a profitable customer. A profitable customer is one who, a person, it could be a household or it could be a company, that yields a revenue stream over time that would exceed some acceptable amount of the company's cost for attracting that customer, for selling to them, and then servicing that customer. Okay? So it's not only about the cost of the product that's being sold, but it's all of the other activities that may be involved in that selling process. Okay, so here's your advertising and direct marketing. Selling may be salespeople, your frontline people, and then perhaps you have a service center or you have warranties that need to be fulfilled. So there's a lot of things that may actually go in to that company's cost that you might not have thought about before. It's not uncommon either for a company to actually lose money on either the first one or two transactions with the customer. And if you have ever purchased a Groupon or a Living Social deal, almost all of those are transactions where the company, maybe it's a restaurant or a hair salon or an amusement park, they probably lose money through that Groupon and Living Social deal. But they're hoping that you'll be satisfied or maybe overly satisfied and that you'll come back again so that over time you become a profitable customer through loyalty, through satisfaction and then loyalty. So they're willing to sacrifice their own revenues on the front end in order to attract and then retain you in the long run. And that's why that long run is important. It's time. Time is the focus of customer lifetime value. So here's another example. T-Mobile that gives everyone in the family a free Samsung Galaxy. And this is for new customers. So they're probably going to lose money on that. This, I think, was part of the old model of cell phone. And hope that you like T-Mobile and you like their service, and then you'll stick around for a long time. So I've mentioned a couple times that customer lifetime value, it's a dollar amount. Okay, we're trying to figure out what is the net present value of that future stream. So I'm going to show you a couple of slides. One of them is a little bit more complicated, but it gives the background of how do we calculate customer lifetime value, because this is something that firms will do. Now, your textbook has a little bit different chart. I preferred this one because I think it gives the flow a little bit better. So one way to calculate the full customer lifetime value is to set up an Excel spreadsheet or something like that where you can input the average acquisition cost, average revenue per customer, average cost and profit. And those are pretty straightforward because you usually have the financials to support them. These are the ones that can get a little bit more questionable. Customer retention rate refers to how many customers are you keeping. Now, there are some companies where it's really easy to tell. AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon, because they're monthly subscription or they have annual contracts, it's very easy to know how many customers you had in year one and how many of those you still had in year 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. Okay, that's pretty easy. Same with Netflix and Hulu and all those subscription type of companies. Now, for your consumer packaged goods, where you go to Kroger and maybe one day you buy Tropicana orange juice and you do that for a year, and then something else sparks your interest and you switch to the Kroger brand because they have a different type of bottle, who knows. That's a little bit more difficult for Tropicana to know. They may see that overall their sales sell-through at Kroger maybe changed a little bit, but they don't really know, how many actual customers. All they know is how many, jugs of orange juice they've sold. So that can be a little more challenging. So that's the retention rate, okay, which also indicates the defection rate. Okay, if you're retaining 60%, you're losing 40%, right? So in any case, for me, this is a little bit too complex for this class, only because there's a much easier and straightforward way to do this. And part of it is because this is very difficult for firms to predict. The likely customer profit for this year may be a fairly close estimate to what actually occurs, but it gets to be very difficult to predict your likely customer profit 5 years down the road. And it also gets very difficult to predict retention rate 5 years down the road, which makes calculating the cumulative customer lifetime value also a little bit difficult. So there's an easier way to do this that a lot of companies have adopted, and this is called the margin multiple method. And what this does is it uses various combinations of a retention rate or an average retention rate and what we call a discount rate. You may be familiar with this term from your finance or your accounting class. The discount rate basically is discounting the net present value of future revenues. And the reason for that is the future is a little bit uncertain, but we know pretty matter-of-factly that $1 today is worth more than it will be worth more than $1 will be worth tomorrow and a year from now and 2 years from now. And that's mostly due to inflation. Then there's uncertainty in the economic climate. So the longer you stretch out the time frame, the less certain you are about what that money will be worth. So probably then the longer you're going to stretch out your time frame in estimating your customer lifetime value, the higher your discount rate will be. So what you have here then is the margin multiple or margin multiplier at different levels of retention and different discount rates. Okay. And what this shows you here is where these numbers in the chart come from. Okay, I would not make you memorize this, but I did want you to be able to see where it comes from. So this, let's just, for example, you can do this on paper yourself and you'll see this is what it comes out to. If I say that I estimate I have 70% retention on average of my customer base, and I want to look, 3 or 4 years in the future, and I'm going to apply a 12% discount rate to my gross margin per customer. I will come here to 12% and 70%, and I see this 1.67. So make a note of that. Now come down here and apply this formula. If you take the yearly discount rate, which is 0.12, minus the yearly retention rate, which I said is 0.7 or 70%, okay? And then you add 1, so get that number, then put that yearly retention rate at the top of 0.7, you should come up with 1.67. So that's where those numbers actually come from. Now, to calculate the customer lifetime value, what you need to do is simply multiply the gross contribution or estimated gross contribution per customer times that margin multiple. So here's a scenario for you to work this out. Let's assume that Zappos has a 70% average annual retention rate. So they sell shoes online. And they typically apply a 14% discount rate. Okay, so 14 is here, 70 is here. So here's your margin multiple that you should use. What is the customer lifetime value if the average customer margin averages $350 a year? And see if you can work that out given what I've given you here. Now remember, this in the parentheses is simply the formula to give you what's in these cells. So you already have it, 70% retention at 14% discount rate. You should get this right here, $556.50. So that's the average customer lifetime value for a customer who grosses $350 annually in terms of the margin. So if you're Zappos, how much money would you want to spend to keep this customer? There's probably some kind of standard percentage that they may have where they say, we don't want to spend more than, let's say, 30% of this to market to or keep that type of customer, or 40%, who knows what it is, right? So that's how that helps them determine that. Now let's talk a little bit about not only attracting but retaining customers. What this figure shows you is the main steps in attracting and retaining customer. And think of it in terms of like a funnel, where you start with a very large open end and it gets smaller and smaller and smaller at each stage. And what this funnel identifies is the percentage of the potential target market at each stage in that decision process that they may go through. So they may be merely aware to then becoming highly loyal. So here's awareness here, and then there could be many marketing activities and promotions, customer contacts, follow-ups and services that would lead to the smaller end of loyalty. And it's smaller because people are falling off, you know, they're open to trial, but maybe they didn't like the product. Zappos didn't serve them as well as they wanted them to, so they go somewhere else, go just to the shoe store at the mall. So that's the reason why the funnel gets smaller and smaller. I think we'll skip that one. Now, how do we build long-term relationships? Building long-term relationships, directly reflects loyalty. How do we encourage loyalty without spending too much time on this? Loyalty requires businesses to interact closely with customers in any way that's possible. Now, some customers, they don't want interaction or they don't want frequent interaction. So again, you've got to know your customer. What are they willing to tolerate? Personally, I get so many emails every day from companies that want to interact with me. They want to have touch points with me. And some of them I just simply get tired of and I unsubscribe. So there are ways to interact closely with customers, and finding the right ways is a pinnacle to encouraging loyalty. You can also develop loyalty programs. Loyalty programs like spend $100, you'd get $10 off credit on your account. Maybe for Kroger, part of their loyalty program involves the gas points, and a lot of people really like the gas points. So there's a lot of creative ways to develop loyalty programs. There's also the notion of creating what we call institutional ties. So how can you connect the brand with consumers in sort of an organic fashion? One thing that companies may do on their own or may support, even if they don't sponsor it, are what we call brand communities. And these are specialized community of consumers and employees whose activities and maybe even their own identity focus around the brand. One of the most popular brand communities is the Harley's Owners Group, or HOG for short. And there's thousands of members. They have motorcycle rallies across the country every year. And it's a very, very strong brand community where Harley-Davidson can interact very closely with those customers. This Pokemon Go, I don't know how much longevity this will have, but there are sort of these organic brand communities of Pokemon Go players where people will gather and play. And this is an actual picture from, I think, somewhere in Canada of people in this one place playing Pokemon Go. So it's kind of a brand community around Pokemon, people who are fanatical about the brand, but it gives Pokemon an opportunity to have connections with customers. The These people are what they call a consciousness of kind. They feel connected to the brand. They share some sort of rituals or stories or traditions. Like I said, I don't know how long this one will last, but certainly for the Harley's owners group, it's been decades and decades and decades of these rallies and these events. And I think more importantly is that people who are part of these brand communities, they share some kind of moral responsibility or duty to the community as a whole or people within that community. And some of them are brand sponsored, but probably the most successful ones are not necessarily brand sponsored, but that doesn't mean the brand cannot use them to help encourage loyalty. And that is the end of chapter 5 for us.